Welcome to another exciting episode of Have Game Will Travel. I'm your host, Bennett Newsome, also known as DamnitBennett out in the gaming community. But as the director of esports growth and development here at Full Sail University, I'm super passionate about exploring the diverse world of esports and gaming beyond just skill level. So whether you're a first-time listener or a returning fan, we're thrilled to have you here for this virtual journey through the experiences of industry professionals. But get ready to engage with our guests and learn from their perspectives. But remember to submit your questions in the chat. We'll feature them on the show and get the answers that you want. But sit back, enjoy the ride as we kick off another Have Game Will Travel with our guest, JJ Myers. JJ, welcome to the show. How is it going?
It's going great, man.
Awesome.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Go ahead and introduce yourself real quick to the audience so they know who you are.
I'm JJ Myers. I'm the director of competition for NACE. I oversee all the competitive efforts for NACE and for NACE Star League. Kind of built the system for what NACE is currently operating under as far as Varsity Premier, Varsity Plus, Open Premier, Open Plus. That's kind of the short and sweet of it.
Yeah, you guys have had probably more offerings this year than ever before, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I think we're at like 13 titles now. We have the partnerships with NASCAR, with iRacing, with chess, continuing to expand. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So let's rewind a little bit. Obviously, that's what you're doing now. But I think part of the fun of this show is getting to learn about you and your journey through the world of gaming and esports. So what's kind of your background with gaming? Have you been a lifelong gamer? Was it something later in life, maybe in college? How did you get into gaming?
No, I grew up. My sister had a Sega Genesis, and I enjoyed playing it. So I was born in '92, and like '97, '98, StarCraft came out.
Yeah.
And I had an uncle. My uncle was 10 years older than me, and he was deep into StarCraft, deep into StarCraft.
Yeah.
And I used to sit behind him and watch him play StarCraft. And then kind of I begged my parents for years and years and years and years to get a computer. Around 2001, that's when Warcraft 3 came out, and that was like my first computer game. That was like my first taste of like what would then be known as esports. At the time, it wasn't even known as esports, but that was like my very first competitive game, and that's kind of where I really cut my teeth. I played that game for probably 10 years. It wasn't until like 2010 that I switched off of it, and then I picked up League of Legends.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so obviously you have a long history of gaming. Shout out to the Sega world. That was probably my favorite console when I was a kid. I remember Christmas morning getting the 32X thing that you put on top of it and played Doom for hours, which was always fun. But obviously getting into the gaming space for you was a big deal. I mean, obviously your sister was into it, your uncle was into it. Did that lead to further opportunities in school or in college?
No, so I was so all through like elementary, middle school, and high school, I played baseball. And I would play baseball all day, and then I'd come home and I'd game all night. And I was always I felt like sort of like an outcast because I was too nerdy for the jock kids and too jockey for the nerdy kids, and like I didn't fit in with anybody because I played sports and I did gaming, and like this was even before like Call of Duty was socially acceptable as far as like after school activities. Yeah, so my journey has been kind of wild through the entire thing.
Yeah, and you talked to me earlier about really something that was important to you in your career that really helped kind of set you on a path, and that was your early career at McDonald's. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I finished 8th grade. I turned 14, and I got hired at McDonald's immediately. My sister was one of the managers, so it was a bit of a nepotism hire.
Right.
And I worked there for about 10 years. Once I graduated high school, I actually dual enrolled through high school, and I graduated high school a few credits shy of my associate's degree. But I didn't immediately pursue college. I stayed at McDonald's. I worked my way up to a kitchen department head, and I had a team of 40 or 50 people under me, and I was in charge of like the entire P&L of the kitchen department. That's food costs, that's ordering truck, that's equipment maintenance, ordering new equipment. And I think it gave me a really interesting perspective and a level of customer service that maybe not most people my age had, because I ended up going back to school. I left McDonald's when I was 24, graduated from UCF when I was 25, and then I went right into esports. And there was a lot of esports people who were my age going to kind of the same type of jobs, but had little to no work experience. And
Right.
I had 10 years of experience and 6 years of management experience under my belt going in. And it was really, really interesting. And I think it's kind of shaped how I handle kind of the NACE members. Like
Yeah.
I've just had 10 years of customer service, and it's just really changed the way I interact with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a valuable piece of experience that you were able to gain, especially at such an early age. That's going to have a huge impact on the rest of your career. And obviously, I've got to meet you at the NACE convention, and was blown away with just everything about you. Became your biggest fan. So I think that probably has a lot to say about what you're doing, and really your time that you spent there. So congrats on that, and that's huge. Obviously, UCF, our neighbors, right down the street from Full Sail. Did you experience any sort of gaming or esports at UCF when you were there, or was it just, hey, I'm here to finish my degree and get out?
So I was like heavily into League of Legends, and I was trying to like do the content creation thing while I was at UCF. I was trying to push into Masters for League of Legends for the first time.
Okay.
And I really just didn't have time for anybody else for anything. I went to class, and then I went right back to my apartment. I lived in the off-campus housing. I lived at the Lofts. Beautiful place,
Yeah.
Really expensive.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I know where they are.
But it's like a mile and a half, 2 miles from UCF.
Yeah.
And it would take me an hour to get there and an hour to get back. But I Ubered basically Friday and Saturday for money, so I didn't have to really work. And this was before Uber put in kind of like the limits on how long you can work. And I'd go out and I'd start Ubering at like 4 or 5 o'clock on a Friday, and then I would come in at like 1 or 2 p.m. on Saturday. And I would pull in anywhere between like $800 to $1,200, and that would be enough money for the week for me, right? Yeah. That's it. And then I would focus basically on school and streaming. I was streaming on the days that I wasn't Ubering probably 16, 17 hours a day. None of it was healthy. I don't recommend this to anyone. None of this is recommended.
It was a different time, right? Like
it was.
We always talk about back in the day, like you had to outlast your competition. Maybe they would raid you, but that was like how you found a new audience with little to no discovery on Twitch at the time. But now it's a little bit different. They're working on it. So don't 24-hour stream all day. So obviously you're working hard. You're very dedicated. I could not imagine driving Uber that late and into the afternoon after a full day of school and work. But the dedication is there, which is super important. So you already have the education. You already have the customer service background. You talk about the competitive side a little bit. Competing yourself, and then obviously now for what you do with your career. Talk to us a little bit about the background in your competitive nature.
I don't even enjoy winning. I really don't, right? I just detest losing. I cannot stand losing. It puts me in a mood that I can't tolerate. And winning is a lot of different things, right? Like winning's a lot of different things to a lot of different people. When I got hired at both my jobs as coaches before I got into kind of my role now, one of my biggest questions was like, what does winning look like to you? Because winning does mean so many different things to so many different people, right? Like for Hawkeye, which is my first job, winning meant getting more students enrolled. It didn't mean winning on the field. It meant getting more students enrolled. That's what winning meant. And like I wanted to win. Like I wanted to make my employers happy. I wanted to win. ECPI was a little different. ECPI is a non-traditional school. Very, very, very STEM heavy. I think it has a lot of similarities with Full Sail. But for ECPI, what winning meant to them was developing soft skills in my students. Yeah. But again, like winning can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But like when I have a stated goal, like I don't even enjoy winning. It's not even fun. I just hate it. I hate losing so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like there was some skills that you learned, both at Hawkeye and ECPI that kind of changed your approach at your current role at NACE?
I think it's pretty interesting to get the perspective of some of these schools. So Hawkeye was a community college, and ECPI is kind of similar in the same way in that like I didn't have traditional students.
Right.
Most of my students were actually older than I was when I got hired, so
Okay.
it was pretty interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
But ECPI, I was only in charge of 2 teams, or Hawkeye I was only in charge of 2 teams, so I really got to work with students on a much more granular level than I got to work anywhere else. So it definitely taught me how to relate to students more. Whereas ECPI, I was in charge of 7 teams, and that's where I really started putting on like my first events. Like it started with Hearthstone Firesides, which were very small. We'd have like 50 people out. We'd get some level of catering from the culinary school.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I first started like doing events. Nothing at the scale that I'm doing now, but
Right.
that's where I first started doing events, planning things, whether it was like watch parties for the students or open tryouts or tabling and getting more students involved. Like I said, we had the Hearthstone Fireside gatherings. A couple different times we had kind of watch parties where we had our JV player varsity team. But that's kind of where I started like doing events for the first time.
And specifically the events that you were working on, talk a little bit about what that was and really how that kind of birthed a new spirit in you for wanting to pursue something like that.
So the events were fun. Kind of what got me involved in the current role that I'm at is in 2019 there was the national convention at Harrisburg.
Yep.
And NACE was electing a whole new suite of leadership, both the board of directors and the competition council. The competition council was made up of 10 members of coaches and directors for NACE, but in 2019, only 6 people had submitted their names for the competition council. So they were taking open nominations from the floor about who wanted to get involved in the competition council. And I talk very loud, but I'm not very like outspoken and outgoing, right? So like they're like, who do you want to like? Does anybody want to be on the competition council? And I'm sitting back here, I'm like, not me, not me, definitely not me. And then my boss ran for the board, and he was also like, nope, you're gonna go do it now. And he like raised my hand. He's like, I nominate him, and I was like, oh my god, Mike.
Of course.
And I got voted into the competition council. And I love coaching, I love directing, but I also realized that I love tournament organizing, and that was like my first take on it. Like we basically drafted the first iterations of the NACE rulebook, and I did that for 2.5 years almost. And NACE was hiring a director of competition, or at this point it was a competition manager, and I was like, I'd be great for that. Like, who knows more than the person who built the thing?
Right.
And I applied for it. Went through a couple of rounds of interviews, and luckily I got it. I've had an absolutely fantastic experience here, and I've expanded my skill set immensely. Like I got the opportunity to really run events at scale. I got the opportunity to work with some really cool broadcast partners, and some other things. So I was really lucky in my role. I knew when I applied for it, I was like, I need to apply because if I don't get this job now, somebody else my age is going to get this job and be there for 40 years because no one in esports is old.
Do you feel like coaching was a great kind of jumping point to get into your career at NACE? That was really kind of a thing that helped set you up for that?
I think in NACE, like our most at the national office, there's a heavy benefit to coming from NACE membership. For people who have never been a part of NACE membership and have never been a coach, it's very hard for them to come in and understand kind of the wants and needs of NACE membership and why they want or need the thing. So I work with Playfly as far as joint competitive operations, and because of my background as a coach and a director, it makes it very easy to articulate what needs to happen and why it needs to happen. For people who have never been involved in a coaching role at a NACE institution, I think it's very hard to come in and understand their wants because it's significantly different than club teams. Club teams are decentralized by nature, so you need to have as many touch points as you can where they can like fill out information for competition. Whereas maybe a NACE director wants to do it all themselves, so they need to be able to sign up all their teams at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Our first competitive platform was Challenger mode, and you could only run one team as a coach at a time. So like if you had 3 Rocket League teams, you literally had to have 3 accounts on Challenger mode to run your 3 teams. And I had to explain to people why that wasn't a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when you're trying to sign up your, every single one of your players for something. And if you've worked with college students before, sometimes that is very difficult to get them to go do something like that. So definitely helped out, I'm sure, in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, getting college students is like pulling teeth. I know that for like tournament registration, you literally have to just stop practice because you can't trust them to do it on their own. It's like, all right, you guys are doing all of this before you touch the computer.
Yep.
Um,
So talk to us about like your day-to-day kind of responsibilities at NACE. Like what does a day in the life of your shoes look like?
so my day-to-day changes seasonally.
Yeah.
So like like you start a school, so you have like August, right? So a big part of my job is making sure that people understand what they're supposed to be doing. So in August, it's a lot of Q&A, right? Like this is how you get on the platform, this is how you set up your team, like these are the rules. Like the first 2 weeks of registration, first 3 weeks of registration, I spent almost my entire days in Zoom calls, just walking new coaches and directors through what they need to do. As registration closes, there's the seeding portion of it. Go through, seed, handle the data. There's always a handful of people that miss the registration deadline and need to get in. That adding late is always much harder than getting them in on time, and that will end up taking up a significant couple of days. But so like once September starts, we do end up having rolling registration closes. So like varsity Premier closed, then Open Premier closed, then Open Plus closed. League of Legends just closed on Tuesday. I've been doing League of Legends seeding and League of Legends data basically since Tuesday. As you get closer to grand finals, obviously like what goes on to grand finals takes up larger and larger portions of my day. Rolling into the spring, you kind of have the same thing in the fall, but then my days are also taken up with a bit of reaching out to publishers, and we need to make sure that we get our agreements in line for the fall and the spring of the following year. And then kind of the same thing, rolling registration closes, like in season. If anything gets elevated, it gets elevated directly to me, and I have to prepare reports for the CC so they can rule on an appeal of any kind. And then coming out of the spring, you immediately switch into summer mode, which is like, are there any rules that need to be updated? What needs to be changed? Like starting to plan grand finals locations for the following year. And then obviously like the big one is the NACE convention. While I don't do any planning for the NACE convention, there is a lot of work that needs to get done. And once I kind of finish up with my competitive duties, I get thrown into that. So like the national office starts working on the national convention around February, like in earnest. Whereas I won't start touching it until after grand finals in April, May.
Okay, awesome. And we do have our first question from chat. It comes from Samurai Tank, and she says, I would love to know how JJ has seen competitor growth in collegiate esports, especially since joining NACE as a staff member.
I think there's 2 ways to answer that. One is in like the strength of the skill set of the players, and the other is in kind of total growth. When I first got into NACE, my first season on the competition council, I think we only had like a couple thousand people playing across all our titles. I'm talking like 1,500 to 2,000. Right. Our reg numbers came in for the fall. Across the whole NACE dog ecosystem, we're nearly at 20K. It's like 19,600 uniques. And then even as far as like competitor strength, I've seen our divisions get stronger year over year over year over year. In the spring, we took the top 16 League of Legends teams in varsity for our League of Legends Invitational, and the top team was like full master and grandmaster, and the bottom team was like low platinum and almost gold. And we just closed registration off for NACE, and we took 32 teams this time, and the lowest ranking teams in the division are basically diamond. So there's been a huge growth in both skill and a huge growth in total number of students and total number of schools. My very first NACE convention I went to, I think we had 150 members, maybe a little less, and now we're floating around like 260. Just huge growth in the esports space. Schools are building facilities at a level like I couldn't even imagine. I know St. Clair has their palace up there now.
Yep.
Obviously, you guys have the Fortress. Boise's moved into like 2 different arenas since I first met Doc. But schools are building these great spaces and are doing these great things. They're hiring educators. They're hiring support staff. It's my first job at Hawkeye, I was 20 hours a week for $20 an hour. and there was no support staff. And seeing these schools have 2, 3, 4 assistant coaches, someone to help with grades,
Yeah.
people like you with student success, right?
Yeah.
Like these esports programs are expanding. It's great to see. I kind of wish these opportunities were there when I was younger,
Oh, yeah.
but it's great to kind of like trailblaze forward and make sure that the path is easier for everybody who comes after.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I mean, it's really been fun to watch. I think when we joined NACE, we were like number 46, and to see it now is like just insane. Like, this is so cool to see how many schools and institutions across the country in North America are involved in this. And I feel like NACE has really helped foster the growth of esports, especially within the community of colleges and universities, nationwide. How do you feel like, what do you see as the kind of like the future of that? Like, what's the next steps for that growth to continue?
I think we continue legitimizing the process every year. Kind of what we're doing is getting better and better and better. We have like our eligibility systems and our ITCs, and like every year we're kind of revamping the system to make it work better. But we're going to continually get better. A lot of some of the rules inside of even competition at a whole right now are honor system, right? Like how do I know that DamnitBennett is the person who's actually playing on DamnitBennett's account, right?
Yep.
And every year we're kind of getting better and better and better. I think we're going to move to a place, at least competitively, where at the highest level you're going to have players on camera.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, but that growth is coming. And kind of like a lot of the rules around that. I would personally like to see competition get to the point where you're seated more regionally than you are by skill level, to kind of incentivize more LAN games,
Yeah.
in the regular season.
Oh, yeah.
Like Florida Southern's not super far from you guys, right? If we put
No,
you guys in
yeah.
the same division, there's a world where you guys get home and away with them.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the world I want to build towards, because a lot of kind of the questions that people have, like, are people playing in their arena? Is it the
Yeah.
actual player on their account? Are they cheating? All of that becomes much, much harder in a world where your coach and my coach both can see what's happening at the same time.
Yep.
Transparency is key. I also think that as someone who does have a traditional sports background, at least in high school, that meeting other competitors face to face is really important. They're not just the person behind the screen. They're not just a voice coming through the microphone.
Yep.
I think a lot of the toxicity inside of esports in general, not just collegiately, but in general, is alleviated by realizing that it's an actual human being with thoughts and feelings and emotions behind the keyboard. So I think more in-person opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be huge. We would love that, I know. And you're right, absolutely right. I think it is a very different smack talk when you're standing across from them versus behind a keyboard, and that can really probably shape a lot of things. Plus, I think just like playing traditional sports, or as my friend Jacob Kaplan calls it, T-sports, you can always just try to meet the other people you're playing with, right? Like, hey, good game. I mean, one of the things I loved about playing hockey when I was younger was like, after every game, you shook their hand. Like, that was a good sportsmanship type of a thing, right? And so, getting to be on LAN and from the LAN stuff that we've done here at Full Sail with UCF or Rollins and some of the other schools around us, it's been really great to see that happen in real time with our players and their players just really come together, having good conversations, being competitive against each other when it counts, but then after, hey, everyone's having a good time, let's go have some food. Like that's always been a really fun part of that experience. So that sounds like it would be an absolute blast to make that transition in the future. Obviously, we've got a lot of people that watch the show that are current college students that are or they've just graduated and they're finding themselves in their first role. You had a huge opportunity for yourself going from being a coach to leveling up and joining NACE. What sort of advice do you give for any of the coaches out there that are running programs that are looking to really elevate their careers and move into different types of positions?
I think, and I actually tweeted this out like 2 weeks ago, but I think what I said was work hard and keep your head down and be good at what you do, right? I think there's a lot of people in esports who are trying to make a name for themselves by going on Twitter and giving you the latest hot take. I think that people in general will get much more respect if you handle kind of whatever's happening behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at my Twitter account, it's not very controversial. It's a great day to esports. It is. It always is.
Yeah.
But so I'll talk a little bit about like how I transitioned into being a coach, right? Because like making that first leap was hard. Like, getting from not being a coach to being a coach was much more difficult than going from a coach to being a director at NACE. But so I was streaming at UCF. I actually launched a coaching website. And I wasn't doing like one-on-one coaching per se, but I was writing like articles and making YouTube videos about like different mechanics inside of League of Legends and everything else. And I didn't even know what I was doing it for. I was doing it because I loved it. Right? Like I wasn't trying to get anything about it. I wasn't monetizing it at a super high level. Like I'd get a couple hundred clicks on Google AdSense. That's about it. Like it's like a penny.
Right.
And when I graduated college, my dad's like, "All right, it's time for you to get a real job." I was like, "What is a real job?"
Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah, I don't know about this. I spent all this time working at McDonald's, and that was how I knew that I didn't want to do that. Right, like that's what ended up making me go back to school. But I was like, I'm gonna work in gaming, and I just started Googling like, how do I do this? And I realized that like collegiate esports was starting to become a thing. Like NACE had just been founded like the year before that, and I applied to every opening in the country for a collegiate coach job. And I ended up getting interviewed at this little school in Iowa, a place I've never been, coming from Orlando.
Yeah, right.
And I basically took this coaching site and I was like, this is my portfolio. And I never viewed it as my portfolio, but that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
They were the only school that interviewed me out of like the 50 applications I put in. And I moved out there to work part-time. And I have a lot of friends that I trust and respect. And everybody told me I was crazy. They're like, you cannot move across the country for a part-time job. You just finished your bachelor's. Go get a real job.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, if I don't do this now, I'm going to be miserable. Like I don't have a wife. I don't have any kids. I have nothing that really ties me here. And I left. And I was there for about 8 months. I did some really cool things at Hawkeye, especially with Overwatch, which isn't even my game. And it got me noticed by ECPI. And then I moved to ECPI. And I moved up to full time. And that was there for about 2.5 years. But for people trying to get in, keep doing things, keep track of what you're doing, right? Like I ended up with a portfolio and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
Keep your head down and do great work. People will notice you. People notice when good things are happening. And don't feed into the Twitter drama.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and it's also something to say because a lot of coaches slash directors of programs, they wear a million different hats, which obviously there's a whole conversation there, but that is true. You end up building a pretty incredible type of portfolio based off of all of the things that you've done while working, you know, as a coach or running a program like that. And that's super important to make sure that you're maintaining that and building that and adding it to, you know, even if it's a little thing like, oh, I was doing, you know, observing, you know, and gameplay direction for the stream. Like that's something to put on because people are going to see that. People are going to want to know more. They're looking for that, you know, type of thing. So definitely great advice there, JJ. I love that. We do have another question here from chat. It comes from AKA Royal. And they ask, does NACE bring on interns who are currently studying in college to work in the esports industry post-grad? If not, what would your recommendation or what would you recommend as the first step in a long-term career in the industry?
So NACE itself doesn't bring on interns. It's something we've talked about. I think it's something we're still trying to figure out how to do, at least appropriately. We don't want to just waste your time. We do have the partnership with ESI, and we are helping schools get kind of internships with Esports Illustrated. We just hired John. He's kind of my competition support specialist. That is kind of like our entry level role. That's where I would advise new grads to apply. Unfortunately, there's not that many roles in the national office right now.
Right.
The national office 3 years ago was 2 staff members, and now we're up to me, AJ, John, Nathan, Michael. We're now up to 6. We went from 2 to 6 in 4 years, so we're continuing to expand. But apply at other coaching jobs. Try to get involved in your school's esports department. I know there's a lot of teams bringing on graduate assistants at this point. I wouldn't have a bunch of the student debt I had if these opportunities existed for me.
Right. Yeah, I like that. And, you know, I feel like that opportunity right now as a student is so important is getting involved with your esports organization at your school. If there isn't one, figure out how to start one. I think that's such an important piece. We see a lot of people out there in the industry that they didn't have an esports team or a club or anything at their school, and they changed that. And that was their first thing on their resume, and now they're out being successful in this industry. Because of building something great at their institution. So getting involved right now while you're a student is huge. And that doesn't have to be just playing on a team. That can be running club events. That can be, trying to work with faculty or staff to build, something that people are interested in participating in. So definitely look within, when you're trying to figure out how to get involved and what the next steps take. I can speak from the Full Sail perspective. Like, we're always looking for interested, dedicated students that want to be involved with the different events that we do put on here on campus. And so, joining our Discord, getting into that mix, building yourself into that community is a huge part of that journey. So always trying to do those things is really important.
There's even opportunities for current students kind of inside the ecosystem that is Collegiate Esports.
Yeah.
Right? Like NACE Star League as an entity, we hire anywhere between 15 and 20 current students to kind of be our floor level admins while they can't kind of rule on any of their team's games, like any of their university's games, and they can't kind of be on the team that they're ruling on. But there's opportunities there. Like I said, we hire anywhere between 15 and 20 a season. They're usually for like 10-month contracts, fall and spring.
Yeah.
There's also kind of, and this is much more Midwest, I will say, but there's a lot of Smash regionals that are always hiring for TOs. I can tell you, because you're like, one of the questions about having long-term growth in the industry. We have like 2 or 3 former admins from NACE Star League that are now directors at programs.
Yeah.
Like, this was their gateway to a bigger and better job. It's really cool. Working inside of NACE Star League is great. They kind of report to Kyle and Curtis. Both are fantastic people. Could not shout them out enough.
That's awesome. Yeah. And obviously, we want to continue to provide those opportunities in the collegiate space. And I think, that pathway, hopefully opening that up even more in the future, is going to be a really key thing for everybody in the space to provide, internships, to provide opportunities for students to get into that. We do have another question from chat, which is great. Lots of questions today. Comes from Jacob as Nachos. What are you seeing as the most important jobs / opportunities for folks that want to get into the competitive space or the competitive side of the collegiate esports industry?
So from like an operations perspective, like if we're talking like actually like TOing, I think getting involved in kind of, like I said, like these regional LAN events where they're hiring staff. I know DreamHack does something similar. Yep. CECC did a lot of that. NACE Star League hires a handful of admins. All these other tournament organizers are handling admins. But if that is by competitive, you mean like kind of like these highly competitive programs that are hiring like these coaches, you're gonna have to hit like kind of top of your ladder in whatever your respective industry is, and be seen as kind of a thought leader in the space. I think Command Attack from he's at the Redbirds, does a very good job of kind of that with his kind of threads on the state of Collegiate Esports or the state of League of Legends. But that's kind of answering it from both sides of the coin, from like the school end and from the tournament operations end.
Awesome. And, earlier you talked about how, when we were kind of talking about the future of what competition could look like from a NACE perspective, one of the things that you mentioned to me, like, it was like having the cameras on, right? Like that makes a lot of sense. My question here is what is really the importance, and how important is the education aspect of esports and NACE, and why does NACE have like eligibility requirements for students to join? Like, why is that such a big part of what you guys are doing?
I think, as far as competition is concerned, we do a very, very, very high level competition, and because of that, we almost get kind of the moniker that we're a TO, right? Mm-hmm. And we're not really a TO, right? We're more like a group of schools that have come together to kind of advance varsity esports, and we happen to do competition at a very high level. So I sometimes fear that because of the scale and the quality of competition we have, it actually detracts from some of the other stuff we do. because it just doesn't get noticed as much. Um, and the education side is the most important part, right? Like,
Right.
if you go through our constitution bylaws, like the entire preamble is talking about fostering an environment for students to learn and grow.
Yeah.
Competition is the secondary characteristic. Competition is the vehicle upon which we help students learn and grow. I can tell you that if I was a part of a school's competitive team, I would have gotten better grades in college.
Absolutely.
Like, I absolutely would have.
Yeah.
Because I would have had a reason. I would have had a reason to really pursue my education probably better and take it more seriously. Um, but like I said, I think competition. I think we get this moniker as a tournament organizer, and that's not really what we are.
Yeah.
We are a group of like-minded schools who've gotten together to advance the space, who happen to do competition.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's always, we talk, at Full Sail about how esports is so much more than just, being good at the games. It's kind of the idea of this whole show is that, but one of the things that is different branches into the different, areas, whether that's content or casting or the production side or the event side, whatever that may be. Supporting that, but also having an opportunity to make those into the varsity components so that, hey, in order to participate in this, you also have to have a 2.5 GPA. You have to meet these demands. You have to have whatever the requirements are, because I do agree with you. Like, I would have done much better in school too if I was a part of an esports team, or I was able to stream on the school stream team, just because I was like, once I got the taste of that, I would want to continue. Like, I would just like, okay, that's what I have to do. Cool. I'm going to go, spend, my time hitting the books, versus playing, Call of Duty or whatever. But, it's such an important piece of that puzzle. And maybe going back to your coaching days, how did you try to help student athletes balance their academic responsibilities, but also keep up with the demands of competing, in esports?
I had mandatory study halls for both both the schools I worked at. They had and I got like kind of a weekly grade sheet they had to bring it to me every week where I could see kind of what they were doing.
I like that.
But it wasn't necessarily like balancing esports and academics. Like, you're going to keep up with your academics,
Yeah.
and if you are, you'll have the privilege of playing esports.
Right.
There's no compromise when it comes to that. The only students that didn't have to do study hall, they had like 3.8s. Like, it was like a 3.8 or better.
Yeah.
It was like all A's.
Yeah.
And then maybe a B occasionally.
Maybe a B, right?
And so we had a lot of students who, when they first came in, had like B's and C's and maybe even some lower grades, and they just didn't want to do study hall. And I was like, well, if you don't want to do it, this is how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like we got some pretty good academic growth because they really didn't want to do study hall. Like, for whatever reason, like, they love hanging out with the team, but not one has to do with academics. And I was just like, you're gonna do this at a high level if you want to play for me, and that's kind of it. Like, there's no negotiation here. There's no room for compromise. Like, you're here to be a student. And like, from an institutional perspective, like, if all my students fail, like, they're gonna fire me, right?
Yeah.
Like, so selfishly, I need you to do well too.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, the success of our students and your students and everybody that's involved with NACE, that's the whole goal, is that our students are successful. So, that's a huge part of it. Man, I'm loving all the questions from chat. So we're gonna jump into them. Esports and Coffee, the legends in the house here tonight. How does he see the competitive landscape evolving over the next 2 to 3 years? What are the similarities and differences between collegiate esports competition and pro?
I actually don't see a whole lot of similarities between collegiate and pro at this point.
Yeah.
I think collegiate is an entirely different animal. I'm going to shout out Chase because you referred to it as a microculture of the overall esports ecosystem, and I think that's true. People keep looking at collegiate to be the savior of the entire industry, and I think that's a very flawed way to look at it, and it's putting pressure on institutions and pressure on students that doesn't need to be there. I think we have our niche. I think we know what kind of students we're looking for. From a competitive standpoint, I think teams are going to continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. From like a pro perspective, I do see eventually collegiate becoming tier 2. Like, there's no sustainable way to have tier 2. The only group in the country that can sustain tier 2 is in these institutions, because of just the nature of collegiate. So I think you'll continue to see tier 2 opportunities at a pro level dry up, and I think you'll see schools becoming stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and I think you'll see more teams adopt kind of esports. I think it's really cool. In the last kind of 18 months, you've seen a huge surge in like D1 interest, and as more D1s fall in line, you're going to see just a drastic growth in total opportunities for students, along with kind of total viewership for esports, in my view. And I think that's kind of like the 3-year outlook. Going beyond that, like I said, I would love to see competition get to the point where it's done predominantly in person, right? Where you don't need to worry about an eligibility request for someone wanting to play remote because they're sick. Because if you're not healthy enough to go to the LAN, you're just not healthy enough to play, right? Kind of very similar to football. COVID moved everything online, even though it was predominantly online, and I think it got people used to the idea that like we can just do this forever. I think that the future of esports is in person. I think it provides a level of growth and experience for students that is not matched when they're not with their opponents.
Right.
So that's kind of what I see.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love the tier 2 thought, because that has been a big struggle in the pro scene. And if the only path for people that are going that route is college, that's a huge opportunity for everybody, that opens up possibilities for a lot of people that maybe weren't planning to go to college, and okay, hey, I haven't made it pro, or I made it pro when I was young, and now that's kind of dried up, but there's still a spot for me in the space of esports, and that could be in college. Like, then, hey, this is a cool thing. So could really change some lives out there, which is great. We had another question here from Royale again, and this is there an ACE Discord for students to join? I'm not able to find one at the moment. Is there an ACE Discord that they can join as a student?
So Sari actually linked it. It's just a typical NACE Discord. It's open to students of member institutions. I'm going to actually shout out Joey and Karen Ruggles for creating the student development program, or the student rep group. It's actually a leadership group that was voted in about a year ago, and schools can kind of have student reps, and they can get together and kind of talk about what NACE is doing, and kind of give feedback to the other leadership groups about, like, you're doing this, but this is how it impacts students. You're doing this, but this is how it impacts us. Because we get a lot of feedback from the institutional level, but as far as NACE goes, before that, we didn't necessarily get feedback from the students themselves. And obviously, we want our members to do great. We want their students to do great. So we kind of opened up another leadership group where they could give us kind of their thoughts on how what we're doing could impact them and how we can make it better.
Okay, awesome, perfect. I love it. We have a little bit of time left, so I kind of want to do a little bit more of a rapid fire session with you. First, going back to your coaching time, recruitment was a big part of what you had talked about. That was winning for you, right? It was like, if I got enough recruits or enough students to join the program, that was the win for you. How important, and what are colleges and universities looking for when they scout for talent? So, maybe someone watching this, they're interested in playing on a collegiate esports team, but they don't really know how to go about that. What are scouts looking for when it comes to finding people to join their team?
So at Hawkeye, recruitment was a big deal for us, and I was kind of looking for kind of like a student with very healthy academics who could play the game, and maybe not necessarily at a high level, right? Like, my biggest thing was that, like, you were willing to work, you're willing to compromise with your teammates. At ECPI, it was a bit different. ECPI is not a traditional institution. I did not recruit at ECPI. To be on my team at ECPI, the most important thing was that you were a correct fit for the institution, as opposed to a correct fit for my program. ECPI is an accelerated school. It's typically, the average student age is much older than typical college. You get your bachelor's in 18 months.
Yep.
And it's very, like, they went to school 50 weeks a year. So for me, it was very important that you fit the school first. When I was recruiting, I want to know what your major is. And if you don't want to major at my school, then you're not coming to my school. Like, I'm not going to bring you onto my team for you to flunk out in 3 semesters because you hate journalism or whatever it is. So the most important part for me was to make sure that you were a good fit for my school. And then after you met with kind of the academic counselors and the advisors and the registration team, then we could talk about if you had a place on my team. But and I feel like that's the way for most schools.
Yeah,
There's a handful of schools in the country that are very, very competitive, and it's a little different. And like
for
the
sure.
most important thing is that you're the top 50 ranked in the country. But for me and for a lot of coaches, the most important thing is that you were an appropriate fit for the program. And by the program, I mean the institution. And then we can talk about where you exist on the esports
Yeah.
hierarchy.
Yeah, and that's very similar to how Full Sail is if you're the best League of Legends player but you want a degree in nursing, we don't have that. I'm sorry. Like there's no reason for you to come to Full Sail and take a degree that you're not passionate about, because you probably won't be successful in that, and that's the truth of it, and so recruitment is a very different thing for a lot of different institutions out there. But as a player, I think someone that's trying to find a space in the collegiate esports world, really looking into your future and the goals that you want, the type of career that you want to get into, the degree that you want to study is probably the best way and best path, as you move forward. So what sort of opportunities are available for esports athletes through NACE? Do you have any things that you guys do special that sets you kind of apart?
I'm trying to think. So like we have kind of the ESI
Right.
intern program. We have kind of the student rep program. We also have kind of like the awards that we do at the end of the season. And then NACE Star League as a whole ends up getting some partnerships where students getting involved kind of with like the Better Health, the mental health provider.
Right. Yep.
And some other stuff. But as far as like assisting students at a very like granular level, these are kind of things that NACE is kind of working on, trying to figure out how to best help students. At the NACE convention, historically, we've had a student track where we had kind of speakers and topics that were directly aligned with student development. And then we kind of had like the institutional track and then the member track. So we're continuing to like kind of work on how we can best help and facilitate student success from the organizational level. But I don't think it's a silver bullet that anybody's kind of figured out.
Yeah. What advice would you give for aspiring, for students that are aspiring to pursue a career in esports, whether that's a player, coach, administrator, or anything that falls into that realm?
Keep learning and keep developing skills. It doesn't kind of matter what you are. Having any kind of extra skill will get you noticed over some others. I can tell you that I just went through a huge long hiring process for a competition sports specialist. And everybody that kind of the role is for basically like TOing role, but also kind of at a NACE level. And there was a couple candidates where we stopped and were like, should we actually hire this person? And it's because they had skills that were outside of the realm of the job, right? Whether it's minor coding experience or graphic design work or videography, right? Like any kind of skill you can get, you should get it. And don't turn down opportunities. Like if you want to be a coach and someone's offering you a TOing role, you should take it and get the experience. If you want to be a TO and someone's giving you a broadcast opportunity, take it. Everybody wears a million different hats. Yeah. We've covered that in the show a million different times. And the more you can learn, the better you can network, the better. The more people you get involved with, the better. Don't turn down opportunities. Take anything you can get.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's always the great part too, is that you every time you do something new, like you learn like, hey, did I like this? Or did I hate this? If it's a like thing, you just add that to the list of like, hey, I want to do that again next time. Like, I want to keep trying these new things. And as you learn more about the world of esports and collegiate esports, I think it opens up a lot of other opportunities. For yourself, do you have an impactful moment from your time working in collegiate esports that just like really sticks out to you in your memory?
So, fall of last year, we ran the first in-person grand finals for NACE in years. It was the first one that I had been a part of. It was at the local host in Philadelphia. And this was kind of like the first LAN that had been held post-COVID. Like even the publishers weren't hosting LANs.
Yeah.
And we had this media day. It was Friday, and the teams were coming in. They were scheduled to come in, and we were taking their pictures. And that's when they got the first view of the stage. and watching these kids just light up looking at these stage had such a profound impact on me. I can't describe it. I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. But these kids walked in and they saw the stage and they were taking pictures and they lit up like a Christmas tree. And like I said, it was just such a profound effect to be able to bring this experience to these students, and it was very important to me. And like that moment when I first saw that, I don't think I'll ever forget that.
Yeah, that's an awesome memory, and I'm sure those students are ever going to forget that either. That maybe that was their first time at a LAN. Like that could have been their first in-person competition, and that's that'll definitely leave a mark forever, which is really cool. So for yourself, obviously I want to give you time to shout yourself out, tell people where to find you, how to reach you, but do you encourage community engagement and build kind of a sense of camaraderie around the different colleges and universities involved in NACE? And how does that work? How does that community and bond form?
So the NACE Starlink server is kind of cool. That's where most of the players live. And all of them know each other. They all scrim with each other. They have a great time.
Yeah.
At an institutional level, I think NACE does a great job of connecting institutions with other institutions. You can just kind of see the way our members interact with Member General. Whenever somebody needs something, there's 5, 10, 15 people jumping to help them. And competition's supposed to be fun, and this is supposed to be fun. Esports isn't at a point where like people are trying to gatekeep strategies to keep their secret sauce. Like everybody knows that the more schools who adopt, the better it is for everybody. Yeah. So there's this like vested self-interest in helping everybody you can. I've been very lucky to have a handful of people that have always been there for me whenever I kind of ask questions, like all through being a coach and director to now. Like I'll shout out like Eugene. Yeah. Every time I've ever run into an issue, and like I'm talking like back in 2018 when I first started, like Eugene was one of my first scrim partners. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you please help me? and like Eugene was there for me, like whenever I needed him.
Eugene's the best. We were
Eugene is awesome.
Big Eugene's fans over at Full Sail. So,
but there's just people in esports that will literally give you the shirt off their back, and do anything they can to help you. And I've worked in a couple of different industries, and there's nothing like this. And it makes me really, really privileged and honored to be in the space and to be asked on something like this, because I always want to give back. I said this earlier, but it's really important for me that it's easier for the person coming behind me to do whatever it is, whether it's becoming a coach or a director or getting on broadcast, creating more opportunities. You just got to leave the place better than you found it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell everybody where they can find you on the internet and how to get in touch with you, or if they have questions, where they can reach you.
So I'm Coach JJ on Discord. I'll answer anything you have for me. My only request is don't be like, hey, I have a question, can I ask you? Just shoot your question, shoot your shot. I'll answer it. Yeah. I might not get to you immediately, but I will. And then I'm the missing word on Twitter. Like I said, I really want to help everybody I can. I want to make sure the space is better than I found it. I've seen a lot of these layoffs in esports right now, and it kind of has me saddened. But like anything I can do to help you, whether you want someone to read your resume or give you some advice or whatever, like I'm an open door. I'm almost always available. Just don't hesitate to reach out.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and joining us here today. The final question I have is, when are we going to see some more League streams on your channel?
I haven't streamed League in a bit. I love that game. I hate that game. Everything in the middle. Maybe soon. You gonna play some League with me? How about we co-stream some League of Legends?
Oh man, you will regret saying that, because I will be the worst League player of all time. So yes, I will definitely play some League with you.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Our next show, we'll take a little break for TwitchCon this year over in Las Vegas. If you're going out to TwitchCon, come find me, say hi. We'd love to catch up with you. But we will be back on October 26th for our next episode of Have Game Will Travel. We will see you there. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your evening.